From PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs
and WETA Wellbeings,
this is On Our Minds
with Noah
and Zion,
a podcast about teenagers and mental health, because life is hard.
Really hard.
And hearing stories about what other teens are going through and how they're getting better, it helps.
A note before we get started. Today we're going to be talking about race in class. If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.
Additionally, if issues related to racism or socioeconomic class are triggering topics, we recommend you skip this episode or listen with a trusted adult.
Hey Noah.
Hey Zion, what's on your mind today?
Nothing much. I'm doing pretty good, but I know a lot of people haven't been doing pretty good because of the pandemic and everything that's going on. People all over the world felt its effects. And one of the most common phrases we've been hearing is, "We're all in this together." We're going to explore that phrase throughout this episode, specifically about what it means for someone's race and social class.
So let's hear from a student in Oakland, California, named Onivid, who has some thoughts about it.
At the beginning of the pandemic, when everyone tried to be positive, a new slogan was introduced. A slogan that was meant to introduce happiness and hopefulness. I saw it for the first time on a cold morning in the prideful city of San Francisco, in all its glory. A big, white, simple billboard with the friendly face of a grocery essential worker, saying, "We are all in this together." For people who already know the enraged feeling that this billboard produced, I say, yeah, I know. But to all who wish to understand, here it goes. An essential worker has to be on the front lines of the pandemic, struggling and working every day for debts and payments that wait for no one. Not even the world's crisis of a pandemic. And then to go home to a place so small where it's hard to find a place for themselves and to find peace. Because then in the morning they'll have to be all stressed about what is going to happen. Will I lose my job? Will I get sick? How am I going to pay my rent? Because if you live in the Bay Area, you always worry about the rent. That essential worker does not have the luxury of working at home and quarantining in their house to be safe from the virus. Because no, we are not all in this together. Just like that essential worker, I have economic issues, and although I'm still in school and can shelter at home, I also feel the stress of quarantining in a small place. Because I'm not quarantining in a mansion with a pool, with so many rooms that when I feel bored, I can just change the scenery. I'm sheltering at home with my family of 5, where I share a small room with my 2 sisters. There's no privacy, unless you count the bathroom, but I can't hide in it forever. And before you say, just go on a walk. No, I cannot. Because I live in a poor, dangerous neighborhood, and I'm scared that I, an 18-year-old girl, will be walking in a street full of grown men and junkies. But what makes me the most angry about "we are all in this together" is seeing how slowly by slowly depression is overcoming and transforming me into someone that I'm not. I'm watching myself fade away into a feelingless pit that never seems to end. I'm watching how I cry every week on my bathroom floor asking for strength. I'm battling every single day to find something that distracts me from the emptiness that is depression. I'm watching how slowly all of my dreams and ambitions that I fought for slip through my fingers. My college dreams, traveling dreams, an eager ambition for a diploma. All I can see around is how my illness is stealing my happiness away. And sometimes it's just too much, and I feel all alone. All alone in my desperation and sadness. But I know that I'm not alone, and I know that so many of us are struggling. struggling so hard every day in the isolation of our rooms. We fight every day for new hopes, new dreams. Even though those dreams get crushed by society later, we still fight, even when the world is on lockdown. So no, we are not all in this together.
I really want to thank Onivid for sharing her story with us. It's really upsetting that she just can't go outside without fear of something bad happening to her. I live this middle class lifestyle and I have access to whatever I need at that moment, but lots of people don't have that luxury.
Yeah, you're right. I felt the way that Onivid described depression was really real and personal, so I want to thank her as well for sharing that with us.
And it's not just the feeling of being alone, it's the feeling of being alone with other people around you who are willing to be your support system, but you're not quite sure how to reach out for that help. But I know that even when you want to get help for your mental health, sometimes it's not that easy.
Right, and Onivid was talking about how social class has affected her life during the pandemic. We also know that race played a big role. People of color were more likely to get sick and die of COVID-19 than white Americans. And when it comes to mental health, the National Alliance on Mental Illness says that Black people are more likely than whites to report feelings of sadness and hopelessness. But despite that, they estimate only 1 in 3 Black adults get the mental health care they need. We're going to hear more later about why that is.
And one of those reasons is the way many Black Americans view mental health and mental illness. To dig into this, we're going to hear from 2 best friends who embraced going to therapy.
Hey you all, I'm Shanae from Detroit, Michigan, and today I'll be discussing the importance of therapy for Black girls. Today I have Morgan, which has been my friend since the 7th grade. I'm so happy to have you here, Morgan.
Glad to be here. Hi, you all.
So Morgan, how did you come to the conclusion that you needed therapy?
So I didn't really know much about therapy until I first found out my dad was actually going to jail, because when I was younger, my mom would tell me that he was out of town. So that's where I thought he was. And then the first time she told me where he really was, I didn't take it well. So my grandma suggested that my younger brother and I go to therapy. We went for like about 2 weeks, and then I just didn't care anymore. I didn't care that he was there because I knew he would be coming back. So I took a break from therapy for about 2-3 years. And then my big brother got killed in 9th grade. So I went back to therapy to just get help with the grieving process, because I never lost anybody that close to me. After I went through with the grieving process, I decided I should just stay in therapy just for regular situations that I go through every day. So I continued to go to therapy throughout high school. I took a break for like a year, and I'm in therapy again. Now it's no specific reason. I just feel like you should always go for an unbiased opinion and someone to assist you with maintaining your mental health.
Well, I kind of had a different experience. So the reason I decided going to therapy is because I've been struggling a lot with my mental health throughout the past couple of years. And I brought this situation to my mom, and she told me that Black girls don't need therapy.
So how does your mom feel now that you've been going to therapy?
So my first therapy appointment, when I first got interviewed and everything, my mom actually, at that moment, she changed her whole outlook. And she basically told me, growing up, she stayed in a big household, so she was basically raised to keep everything in and make it seem like they're so strong, and she never really had anyone to talk to, but she felt like therapy was a good outlet, and she looked into getting her a therapist. So expressing myself to my mom about how I felt, and mentally and physically and everything, she saw where I was coming from, and she felt like she can relate.
That's very good. Where did you get the practice of going to therapy? Who introduced that to you for you to ask your mom that?
I noticed ever since I met you, you've taken your mental health very seriously, and it rubbed off on me, considering that you've been going to therapy for quite some time now, and you will always speak about it. I love that you have a family that normalizes going to therapy. Do you hear any stereotypes about therapy?
Yes, I always hear stereotypes about therapy. I was actually conversing with this boy last week, and I happen to work at a psychology clinic where my boss, she is the psychologist, so she sees all different types of people. So once I said where I worked, he said, like, for crazy people. So I had to educate him further about a psychology clinic because not everyone there is crazy. I wouldn't even say anyone is crazy. They can't help the disorders that they do have. I kind of take offense to it when people say similar things like that. This topic that we're discussing is very popular in the Black community, especially because many Black people don't think that mental health is a real thing.
Mental health is absolutely a real thing. Morgan, she went through terrible things in her childhood, so much trauma, and she's really come a long way, through therapy, and she's working through her problems, and that's an amazing thing.
One thing that kind of stuck out with me is what Shanae's mom said. She said Black girls don't need therapy. And to me, as a Black girl, I feel like that, to have your mom, say that to you, like, oh, you don't need therapy, you don't need that. You're, I don't know, I guess above therapy. I don't really know what her mom was trying to say, but I don't think that's true.
I completely agree. I'm a Caucasian man, I don't really experience racial discrimination, but that line just stuck out to me so much.
That leads us into our next story from a student named Deja. She was bullied in school partly because she's Black and loved learning foreign languages. Other students teased her and told her a Black girl shouldn't be studying Chinese. Last year, she wrote a poem about what things were like for her in school. Let's listen.
Sitting in a classroom with two other sophomores and a teacher, and neither has flickered their eyes over to my tear-stained face. I have tears running down my cheeks endlessly, and I'm aware of my makeup brushing off. My mascara is something that doesn't put up the battle to remain on my lashes, my long lashes, as my mother would say. What is freedom? To be free from all the worries that have ever forced their way into your mind. What is freedom? The feeling of never crying again because all it ever does is tear you apart. What is freedom? How would I know when I've never had it once in my life before? What is freedom? Freedom is everything. Freedom mocks me. Freedom laughs at me. Freedom is right in front of me, yet I cannot seem to grasp it within my own fingers. Why can I not have freedom? Why does freedom choose to tease itself in front of my hazel eyes, the ones that the Lord has blessed me with? My Lord, why have I been picked out to be picked on? My God, why have you allowed this to carry on for so long? I just want freedom. Freedom from them.
I can understand where Deja is coming from when it comes to feeling kind of trapped in your own emotions. But the good news is, now Deja is doing a lot better. Before the pandemic, she actually decided to switch to homeschooling. She got a lot of support from her mom, and because she's not surrounded by students bullying her, she is finally able to start to love and accept herself.
Deja recently sat down with Grace, a student reporting lab's intern, to talk about what this past year has been like for her.
Hi, Deja! Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. How are you doing?
It's all good. I'm really happy to talk to you too. I'm actually doing really good today. I'm on vacation, so it's a lot of peace.
Last February, you had written this essay/poem. I was curious, how has that changed for you since being at home for the pandemic?
Even when I did that video back in fall, I was still going through a lot of self problems. I lacked confidence. I had no self-esteem in myself, and I guess I suffered greatly from what I went through. I mean, I might have been home, but I guess I still had memories that I just couldn't leave behind yet. And I guess I was just still living in the moment of all the bullying and discrimination. And it was difficult to forget all about it. But I have to say I've been doing really good for the past few weeks or even months. I mean, I don't feel so bad about who I am or myself anymore, because a few things kids and teachers targeted me on was learning foreign languages such as Chinese and Korean. And now I'm actually in my final Chinese year for high school. And I became more advanced in the language, and I don't feel so bad about learning it anymore. I don't feel so bad about being Black because I was also targeted for my race. It's been over a year now, and I kind of grew to like who I am, like the bubbly, outgoing, nice, kind of shy personality, me being a nerd, being a book nerd. So I'm so happy, and I guess I finally found the peace that I've always been looking for.
How did you go through that process and kind of like come to this really good place where it sounds like you're like a lot happier with yourself?
I'm not going to lie, it was very difficult at first because I thought that just because I left the school, everything was going to change. I was still sad because I love school and I love going to school. And it was kind of difficult adapting to the homeschool program because I never been a homeschool student before. I love going to school. I love school. And as I started spending time with myself, I found that I like the quiet environment when doing my schoolwork. You know, I like to do my schoolwork without anyone bothering me or just picking at me out of nowhere. And so I didn't realize that I started to love being a homeschool student because I can complete my education in peace. Just so as long as everyone was bothering me in school, I was never able to focus on my work. And then I started reflecting the words onto me, and I started to embrace the words, and it was all negativity. That's the problem, though. When no one was bullying me or picking at me, I wasn't used to that. So I started to look down on myself and start bullying myself. And I would always see something wrong with me. I would look in the mirror, and then I'd want to like walk away and not look at myself in the mirror. And it was a long process, but my mom has always been by my side, and she always encouraged me. So I finally looked myself in the mirror, and I just hugged myself. And for the first time in a year, I guess I felt love for myself, and I never realized how much I needed self-love because I haven't had that in so long. And so every day, I just tried little by little to try to build my confidence up, gain some courage. And now here I am.
That's like a wonderful story to hear. I also wanted to ask you if you have any tips for like kids who might be going through a similar situation that you were, being bullied in school and like not feeling like you had anyone to turn to.
The victims are not the cause of the situation, and it took me so long to realize that you don't have to do anything for people to dislike you. You don't have to do anything for people to bully you. The goal, and I'm going to tell you, the goal of a bully is to make someone doubt themselves. The goal of a bully is to make someone feel bad about themselves. That is the goal of a bully. And they only succeed when that person gives into their words. And that's why bullying continues until they bring that person down. And I didn't realize that because I always thought I was the problem, and I always thought I was the one doing something wrong. When really, I had everything I wanted, and I was everything I wanted. I was already like who I was supposed to be. So for anyone who's going through bullying, I'd say don't give into the words because they don't know you. They don't know the truth. Only you know the truth.
I think it's great that Deja found, a system of education that really worked for her. Being removed from an environment that's toxic is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. And we know Deja's not alone with what she went through.
Yeah, so many people of color have the same experiences that Deja were going through. I wanted to learn more, specifically about how people of color deal with mental illnesses and seek treatment. So I was lucky enough to be able to talk with Dr. Ryan DeLapp. He's a clinical psychologist with the Montefiore Health System in Bronx, New York, and assistant professor at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. Hi, Dr. DeLapp. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Do you think mental health differs for people of different racial and socioeconomic backgrounds?
I think culturally there are differences in terms of how people discuss and process mental health, and there also are differences in terms of people's interest in using mental health services. I mean, to be honest with you, I think the mental health field has had an interesting relationship with different, particularly ethnic minority groups over the course of time. Traditionally, people of color have had some tough times interacting with mental health professionals in the past and feeling as if they're heard or feeling as if they can trust the provider that's in front of them. Oftentimes because these providers don't necessarily look like the people that are going there or may not have the same shared experience. And so that can be really hard to open up and really feel comfortable talking to somebody who you're not really sure if they're going to understand.
It seems to me like there's such a stigma around mental health in communities of color, especially in the Black community. These days, it's more openly spoken about. It used to be kind of a taboo subject. Why do you think that is?
When you think about values of like honor and respect and privacy, which can be often a part of many different families, but often in the Black community, that's the case. Going and talking to a mental health provider, that's someone that's outside of that family unit. So, we don't want to be sharing family secrets or things like that, right? And so that can sometimes be the perspective that people have about going to talk to someone. And one of the things I really find to be extremely important is finding ways to educate that it's really not, about going and gossiping or telling your secrets to somebody outside the family, but there are really some important strategies that mental health care can provide.
The purpose of this episode is to unpack the statement, "We're not all in this together." Do you think that statement is true when it comes to mental health regarding race and class?
Yeah, when I hear that statement and I listen to that story, it brings up this concept of what I refer to, or what we kind of refer to as social inequities. Some of these inequities can include, access to care, right? So there are certain communities where, the closest mental health professional may be, 30, 40 miles away, or, maybe take some time to get there. Whereas in other communities, you can go on Google and look up, and find maybe 100 psychologists or social workers or mental health providers within 5 to 10 miles of your home. There are other aspects of inequities that can affect mental health, such as the cost and people's insurance coverage, and many different things along those lines can affect the access. And I think one of the beautiful things, though, about COVID, it's kind of odd to say beautiful and COVID in the same sentence, but one of the things that COVID has helped with is expanding our access by telehealth, right? So using things like Zoom or other types of protected and supported video platforms to be able to reach people, in those kind of more remote areas. And so although that doesn't address all of the inequities as it pertains to mental health care, it does start to progress in some directions that are positive, I think.
We heard Shanae share her mother's initial thoughts on therapy when the topic was first brought up. What do you think of the statement, "Black girls don't need therapy," and how does it make you feel?
Ooh, it's a statement I've heard. I think it's a couple of reactions. I think it's understandable and unfortunate. But I also think in terms of when I hear the term Black girl, right, there's like a combination of expectations that sometimes come with being Black and a female, right? And it makes me think about some of the things that we research at times, and even that kind of we talk about in our communities, which is that strong Black woman kind of theme, right? You got to be strong, stronger than the rest. And while that is that's important, it also comes with some of its drawbacks and its downsides. I'm not sure if you've even heard that phrase, but I definitely hear that quite a bit in the circles that I'm in.
Yeah, I have heard that phrase, and it's I don't really like it that much because it's like Black women have to take all the punches, every punch that's thrown at them. If they get slapped, everything, they have to take everything on, and that's unrealistic. I mean, we're humans. Yes, we're strong, we're powerful, we're great, we're excellent, but we can't take everything on. You know what I mean?
A lot of my work is helping people to expand this idea of what does it mean to be strong. And being strong can sometimes mean taking a break, can mean communicating to people that I'm hurt, or I'm stressed, or I'm, frustrated. And so I think when you think about therapy as a place that you go and do these things, you pause, you talk about emotions, sometimes that can be inconsistent with this idea of being strong. And so I think that can sometimes be a barrier to seeking out therapy as well.
I mean, expressing yourself and being vulnerable is so strong and so hard to do. And I think we need to realize that as a society.
Absolutely. I think the hard part is knowing the safe places to be vulnerable, right? I think that's the hard part. And hopefully people begin to see therapy as that place that's safe, but I also can understand how this idea of being strong being a strong Black woman might have come about, right? Because there may have been places where there was times of vulnerability, maybe around certain peers or around certain adults, and you didn't feel like you got a validating or understanding response from other people.
Deja spoke on being bullied for her race, how it affected her, and how she overcame it. Do you have any tools you would suggest to teenagers getting bullied for their race to combat the mental strain that it causes?
Yeah, it's really tough to hear that people, that youth, adolescents, or that this continues to be an experience. And when I think about tools, sometimes I talk with the folks that I meet with, and I talk about this acronym called POST, kind of like a post in the ground, like staying firm. And I kind of go through each of those letters within my work with individuals to kind of really try to think of some tools and help people to come up with ideas. So the first one, P, is just pause, right? We have to take some time and pause from our day-to-day lives to really understand the impact of these events that we might be encountering. The O is observe and show understanding to your emotions, right? So you were just talking about that. You were talking about how emotions, it's important to pause and notice that, but we got to show some love towards our emotions too and check in with them. The S stands for like noticing what urge you have. What do you feel compelled to do with these emotions? So if you feel hurt, you feel angry, you feel not heard, you feel anxious, what do you feel compelled to do? And then the T stands for think about what response to those emotions is most aligned with your values.
So before we go, is there anything you would like to say to our audience?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I will speak to is moving forward. One of the things that we need in the field of mental health and social services is more people of diverse backgrounds. And so as, youth are considering different career paths, I really am passionate about, encouraging young folks to consider mental health as a field, as a way of offering support to the people in the community that they care about.
Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
So, Zion, we're 3 episodes into On Our Minds, and we've had a lot of questions answered. But what's left on your mind? What are you still wondering about?
Lately, I've been thinking about the weather and our moods. I've noticed that people are starting to come out after long winter months of quarantine and lockdowns. It's bright and sunshiny, but how do these changes affect our mental health, especially teens with a diagnosed depression, like seasonal affective disorder?
To answer all those questions and more, we're going to have an interview with a therapist.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear her point of view. Be sure to listen next week.
It's going to be awesome to hear more of what's
on our minds. Stories are produced by Onivid from Youth B in Oakland, California, Connected Educator Sagresse and Jake Schoneker,
as well as Shanae and Morgan at Cass Technical High School in Detroit, Michigan, Connected Educator Anita Crouch,
and Grace Vitaglione, intern at Student Reporting Labs.
Many thanks to Dr. DeLapp for lending us his time.
This episode was produced by Student Reporting Labs youth media producers Briget, Cusick, and Briget Ganske. Assistance from Mercedes Ezeji.
Executive producer Leah Clapman, SRL Senior Director Elisa Strada, and help from the rest of the Student Reporting Labs staff.
And music by Blue Dot Sessions.
Once again, if you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.
And tell your friends about us. Spread the word. The more you know about mental health, the better.